Good day, students. Welcome once again to our virtual biology lesson. I trust it's been captivating and interactive. I remain your biology virtual tutor, Mr. Kehinde Adesina, and this video is brought to you courtesy of IOTA Virtual Learning. In our last lesson, we looked into the transport system in plants and animals. One of the products that is being transported in plants and animals are respiratory gases and their waste products. And in this lesson, we are going to look at the respiratory system in plants and in animals. First of all, let's look at the lesson outline and the behavioral objective. So in this lesson, you will be able to learn the following: definition of respiratory system, stages of respiration, materials needed for respiration, characteristics of respiratory surfaces, respiratory organs of insects, fish, toad, and mammals, mechanism of gaseous exchange in animals, and mechanism of gaseous exchange in plants. So come along, let's dive into this very important process leading to the generation of energy. Recall that respiration is defined as a biochemical activities of the living cells in which glucose is broken down by a series of reactions controlled by enzymes to release energy. So in the process of respiration, oxygen is taken in to break down the food substances, that is glucose, and release energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Carbon dioxide and water are regarded as the waste product or byproduct of respiration. And the energy that is being released in the process of respiration is used by organisms for various life processes. Stages or phases of respiration. Respiration takes place in two phases or stages. These are the external and internal or tissue respiration. Let's look at this one after the other. Number one, external respiration, also called breathing. External respiration or breathing is defined as the exchange of gases between the environment and the respiratory organs of living organisms. In other words, external respiration simply involves the breathing in of air or oxygen into the respiratory organs such as the lungs or the gills, and is also called inspiration or inhalation, and the breathing out of carbon dioxide and water vapor into the atmosphere, otherwise called expiration or exhalation. Number two is internal or tissue respiration. Internal or tissue respiration is defined as the oxidation of organic food within the cells, leading to the release of energy, carbon dioxide, and water. In other words, tissue respiration takes place when oxygen is taken in and used up by living cells in the body for the oxidation of food substances. For respiration to efficiently take place, there must be various conditions that must be put in place or that must be available for efficient gaseous exchange. These conditions include the following. Number one, respiratory medium. There must be respiratory medium, which refers to the surrounding of the organisms from which it can obtain oxygen. Example of respiratory medium is air and water. Number two, respiratory organ. This is the organ such as lungs in mammals and gills in fish, through which oxygen is taken in to the body and carbon dioxide and water vapor are given out. The taking in of one gas, that is oxygen, and the giving out of another, that is carbon dioxide and water vapor, is called gaseous exchange. Number three, transport medium. This is a system which is able to move the dissolved gases e.g. oxygen, round the body to all the cells and also collect the gases, that is carbon dioxide, which need to be eliminated from the body. Example of transport medium in mammals is the blood. Number 4, ventilation. Ventilation is the movement of water or air in one direction over the respiratory surfaces. This helps to renew the air or water in contact or near respiratory surfaces. Ventilation mechanism, as in human breathing, increases the rate of gaseous exchange. Number 5 is respiratory surface. Respiratory surfaces refers to the definite surface of the body, such as the surface of the lungs or the gills, where the actual gaseous exchange take place. Now, for respiratory surfaces to effectively carry out gaseous exchange, they must have some characteristics. So we are going to look at characteristics of respiratory surfaces. Characteristics of respiratory surfaces include the following. Number 1, respiratory surface must be moist because gases dissolve in solution through them. Number 2, it must be permeable to allow gases to pass in and out of them. Number 3, it must be thin-walled to shorten the diffusion distance and make diffusion easier and faster. Number 4, it must have adequate supply of transport medium, e.g. blood, so that this can move the dissolved gases around the body. Number 5, respiratory surface must have a large surface area to aid diffusion of gases. Large surface area in living organisms is necessary to ensure easy diffusion of gases. Number 6, respiratory areas must be highly vascularized. That is, it must be equipped with capillaries or similar blood vessels and network that will bring in and take away dissolved gases. Now, as organisms differs from one to another, so also is their respiratory organs or system. So we are going to look at the different respiratory system that organisms adopt in carrying out gaseous exchange. Unicellular organisms like amoeba and paramecium make use of their body surface. Hydra and tapeworm make use of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a semi-permeable membrane and it allows for efficient gaseous exchange between hydra and its environment. Earthworm uses the wet skin or the body surface. The skin is adequately supplied with blood vessels, it is thin-walled, it is moist, and it enables efficient gaseous exchange. Fishes like tilapia use the gills for gaseous exchange. The gills help to filter oxygen from the surrounding water medium. Arthropods like insects and crabs uses trachea system. This trachea system is an efficient system which leads from the spiracles on the abdomen of insects to ensure exchange of gases. Arachnids like spiders and scorpions make use of long beaks to carry out gaseous exchange. Tadpoles also uses gills to carry out gaseous exchange. Reptiles like lizard uses lungs. Amphibians like toad and frog have 3 medium of gaseous exchange, which include the mouth, the skin, and the lungs. Both mammals and birds make use of lungs as the main organ of gaseous exchange. And lastly, flowering plants uses stomata and lenticels. Stomata are found on the epidermis of the leaves, while lenticels are found on the stem. Now let's look at the various mechanisms of respiration. We'll start with unicellular organisms like amoeba and paramecium. Now, in unicellular organisms like amoeba and paramecium, there are no special respiratory organs. They live in aquatic environment, and oxygen that dissolves in water diffuses into the body, while carbon dioxide goes out of the body through the surface. The cell membrane of these organisms acts as the respiratory surface. The process of gaseous exchange in unicellular organisms is made possible by simple diffusion. These organisms have large surface area to volume ratio. Hence, diffusion through the body surface alone is enough to satisfy its gaseous exchange needs. Now let's look at mechanism of gaseous exchange in insects. Insects generally use the tracheal system for gaseous exchange. The insects have tiny openings in their abdomen called spiracles, through which oxygen diffuses into the body and carbon dioxide diffuses out. The spiracles lead into certain tubes called trachea. This trachea further divides into smaller tubes called tracheolus, and these tiny tubes get into the tissues and cells through the body fluid. Insects perform breathing movements by compressing its body dorsoventrally, that is, inward from both sides along its entire body, and then relaxes it. When it compresses its body, it becomes flattened and air is expelled from the trachea through the spiracles. And when it relaxes its bodies, air enters into the trachea. During the process of compression and relaxation of the body, oxygen in the air is taken in and dissolves in the blood fluid at the end of the tracheolus, from where it enters the various cells. Also, carbon dioxide from the cells diffuses into the body fluid, then into the trachea, and finally comes out of the insect through the spiracles. Mechanism of respiration in higher animals. Let's take a look at fish. The organ of respiratory system or gaseous exchange in fishes is the gills. The gills are located at both sides of the head region. The gills, which are in 3 or 4 pieces, are arranged in the gill chamber. Each gill consists of a gill filament where gaseous exchange takes place, gill raker, which help to stop food particles from entering the gill chamber, and the gill arc on which the gill filaments are built. The gill chamber is closed externally by the operculum or gill cover. When the fish wants to breathe, it closes its operculum and then opens its mouth and lowers the floor of the mouth. Water which contains dissolved oxygen then rushes into the fish mouth. The fish then closes its mouth, raises the floor of the mouth, and the water rushes into the gill chamber and moves across the gill filaments. Oxygen in the water then diffuses into the gill filament, while carbon dioxide diffuses out of the body into the water. After the gaseous exchange, the fish now opens its operculum, and the water containing dissolved carbon dioxide then passes out to the body into the river or the ocean. For the next breathing to take place, the fish once again closes the operculum and the whole process described above are repeated. In tadpole, the young tadpole uses gills for gaseous exchange. At the tadpole stage, the animals develop external gills through which direct diffusion of gases takes place between the animal and the respiratory medium. Oxygen dissolves in the water can easily diffuse into the body, and carbon dioxide can easily diffuse out of the body by simple diffusion. This is made possible because the ratio of body surface to volume is very large. In the next tadpole stage, the external gills disappears and internal gills develop under an operculum or spout. In this stage, the tadpole breathes in a manner similar to that of the fish. Mechanism of respiration in adult toad. The adult toad uses 3 different respiratory organs or systems for gaseous exchange. The organs are the mouth, the skin, and the lungs. Mouth or buccal respiration. The toad is capable of respiring through the mouth when it is on land. The buccal cavity, that is the mouth, is able to serve as an efficient respiratory organ because it has very large surface area. It is having a thin mucous membrane for easy diffusion, and it is well supplied with blood capillaries. For toad to take in air, the mouth is closed, the nostrils are opened, and the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered. This action creates a low air pressure within the buccal cavity, and this makes air to be drawn in from outside through the nostrils. After this, the nostrils and glottis are closed. Gaseous exchange then takes place in the buccal cavity between the blood in the capillaries and the inhaled air. To remove carbon dioxide from the body, the toad will raise the floor of the buccal cavity, thereby raising the air pressure inside the cavity. By so doing, the nostrils are opened and air containing carbon dioxide is forced out to the environment. For skin or cutaneous respiration to take place, the adult is capable of carrying out respiration using the skin. The skin serves as an efficient respiratory organ because it also has a large surface area and a thin covering. The skin is also moist because of the continuous secretion from the mucous gland. It is also well vascularized, that is, supplied with blood capillaries. As a result, oxygen present in the water or on land can diffuse directly through the entire body into the blood of the capillaries, from where it is transported to cells and tissues within the body. Carbon dioxide from the respiratory cells also diffuse out from the body into the capillaries through the skin of the body. Lungs or pulmonary respiration. The adult toad carries out gaseous exchange with its lungs when it is on land. The mechanism of lungs respiration is similar to buccal respiration. As the toad is about to draw in air, the mouth is closed while the nostrils are opened, and the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered. This action creates a low air pressure within the buccal cavity, and this makes air containing oxygen to be drawn in from outside through the nostrils. After this, the nostrils are closed while the glottis is open, and the air is then forced into the lungs through the glottis, larynx, and finally to the lungs. Oxygen then diffuses into the blood of the capillaries of the alveoli, while carbon dioxide diffuses out from the blood capillaries into the lungs where it is sent out. The air containing carbon dioxide is drawn out of the lungs into the glottis by the lowering of the buccal cavity, while the nostrils are closed. After this, the floor of the mouth is raised several times while air is pumped out of the lungs and finally forced out through the nostrils. Respiration in mammals. Most vertebrates, including birds, lizards, and mammals, use the lungs as their respiratory organ where gaseous exchange takes place. The lungs is a pair of reddish elastic organ, one on each side of the heart of mammal and located within the thoracic cavity of the body. The thorax is supported by a bony framework and consists of the thoracic cavity. It is made up of the breastbone or sternum in front, the backbone or vertebral column at the back, 12 pairs of ribs at the sides, and a dome-shaped muscular wall known as the diaphragm at the bottom. The diaphragm separates the thorax from the abdominal cavity. The ribs are attached to the backbone and the backbone doors, forming a bony cage. They are connected to one another by muscles known as the intercostal muscles. Inside the thoracic cavity lie the heart and the lungs. The respiratory system of man is typical of the respiratory system of mammals in general. It includes the nasal passage or nostrils, the pharynx, the larynx or voice box, the trachea or windpipe, the bronchus, the bronchiolus, and the alveoli. The nostrils lead into the posterior portion of the mouth called the pharynx, and this leads into the voice box or larynx. The larynx leads into the windpipe or trachea. A flat piece of tissue called epiglottis covers the entrance of the larynx to prevent food particles from entering into the larynx and trachea when food is being swallowed into the esophagus, which lies just behind the trachea. The trachea branches into two called bronchi. Both the trachea and the bronchi have rings of cartilage which strengthens them and prevent them from collapsing when the pressure of the air inside is low. Each bronchus leads into the lungs where it branches into smaller tubes called bronchiolus. The bronchiolus then leads to numerous air sacs called alveoli. The alveoli are richly supplied with blood capillaries and are the major sites or surfaces where gaseous exchange takes place. The alveoli communicate with the atmosphere through the continuous air passage leading from them to the bronchiolus, the bronchi, the trachea, the larynx, the pharynx, and the nostrils. Respiration in mammals takes place in two phases or stages. These are the external and internal or tissue respiration. External respiration, also called breathing. External respiration or breathing is defined as the exchange of gases between the environment and the respiratory organs of the living organisms. This is also called inspiration or inhalation, and the breathing out of air, that is carbon dioxide and water vapor, into the atmosphere or environment, and in other words is called expiration or exhalation. So the breathing process consists of inspiration or inhalation followed by expiration or exhalation. Let's look at the process of inspiration or inhalation in man. In this process or in this stage, the following processes are involved. 1. The thoracic cavity first increases in volume as a result of air pumping into it. The diaphragm then contracts and becomes flattened. The intercostal muscles contracts while the sternum is moved upward. The ribs are moved upward and outward by the pressure of the air. Then there is an increase in the volume and a fall in the pressure of the thoracic cavity. Consequently, air from the outside is drawn into the lungs or alveoli through the nose, the trachea, the bronchus, and the bronchioles, leading to an increase in the size of the lungs. The next stage or phase is the actual gaseous exchange. Now, inspiration is followed by gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange takes place in the alveoli. Diffusion of oxygen into the blood capillaries and carbon dioxide and water vapor are able to diffuse out because the alveoli possess all the conditions necessary for all respiratory surfaces. Now let's look at the process of expiration, that is breathing out. The following processes are involved during expiration or exhalation in man. Basically, they are all the opposites of what happened during inspiration. So let's look at them. The thoracic cavity first decreases in volume. The diaphragm then relaxes and assumes its dome shape. The intercostal muscles relax. The sternum moves inward. The ribs are moved downward and inward. There is a decrease in the volume and an increase in the pressure of the thoracic cavity. Consequently, air containing waste products like carbon dioxide and water vapor from inside the alveoli or lungs are forced out through the bronchioles, the bronchi, the trachea, and finally out through the nose. This finally leads to a decrease in the size of the lungs. Now let's look at respiratory system or mechanism in plants. It will interest you to know that plants do not have special respiratory organs for gaseous exchange. However, gases move in and out of plants through the stomata and the lenticels. Let's look at the stomata. The stomata are very tiny openings found in the epidermis of leaves and stem of seedlings. Each stoma is surrounded by two bean-shaped cells called the guard cells. Stomata are more abundant in lower epidermis of leaves and very few in the upper epidermis. The closing and the opening of the stomata are controlled by the guard cells, the lenticels. Lenticels are breathing pore or tiny opening found in the back of older stems. A lenticel consists of a loose mass of small thin walled cells which permit easy diffusion of gases in and out of the plant. Mechanism of gaseous exchange in plants. The shoot system of flowering plants obtains oxygen from the atmosphere and gives out carbon dioxide and water vapor to the atmosphere through the stomata of the leaves and the lenticels in the stem through the process of diffusion. Due to the difference in concentration gradient, oxygen is taken in through the stomata and lenticels, especially during the night, and carbon dioxide and water vapor are given out. But during the day, when photosynthesis is going on, oxygen and water vapor from photosynthesis diffuse out to the exterior through the stomata and the lenticels. Turgidity of the guard cell quickens the opening of the stomata, while flaccidity of the guard cell causes the stomata to close. Gaseous exchange, especially through the stomata, is made possible when the stomata opens. Now let's take a look at the summary of the lesson. In this lesson, we have learned that For respiration to take place, it involves two stages: external respiration or breathing and internal or tissue respiration. Respiratory surfaces must be moist, permeable, thin-walled, and have adequate supply of transport medium, have large surface area, and must be highly vascularized for effective gaseous exchange. Different organisms uses various mechanisms for respiration, which are highlighted in this lesson. You may want to go back to check on these different mechanisms. The respiratory system of mammal include the nasal cavity, the nostrils, the pharynx, larynx, the trachea, the bronchioles, the bronchioles, the diaphragm, and the alveoli. Gaseous exchange in mammals takes place in the alveoli. External respiration in man takes place in two stages: breathing in of air or oxygen, called inhalation or inspiration, and breathing out of carbon dioxide and water vapor, called exhalation and expiration. Plants do not have a special respiratory system or organ. Respiration takes place through the stomata and the lenticels. The turgidity and flaccidity of the stomata controls the opening and the closing of the stomata. The turgidity and the flaccidity of the gut cell controls the opening and closing of the stomata. Now let's find out how much we have learned from this lesson. The first question we'll look at is from WAEC 1998, question 13. Which of the following organisms respire through the body surface? A. Man. B. Fish. C. Tridacts. And D. Hydra. Look into the options and pick your answer. The correct option is option D. Hydra. Hydra respire through the body surface. Next, question 14 from 1998. The stomata of the leaves perform the same function as the A. Spiracles of insects, B. Trachea of toad, C. Pharynx of man, and D. Liver of man. Pick your answer from the option. The correct option is option A. Spiracles of insects. Both the spiracles of insect and the stomata carry out gaseous exchange, allowing oxygen to enter and carbon dioxide to be expelled. Next question, question 18 from 2001. Which of the parts of the gills of fish is involved in gaseous exchange? A. Gill slit, B. Gill raker, C. Govers, and D. Gill filament. What do you think is the answer? The correct option is option D. Gill filament. Gill filaments help in gaseous exchange in fishes. Question 17 from 2006. Gaseous exchange occurs through the following structures in some organisms except A. Spiracles and trachea, B. Alveoli and lungs, C. Stomata and lenticels, and D. Chloroplasts and plastids. Look at the pairing of these organs and pick your answer. The correct option is option D. Chloroplasts and plastids. Both of them are not involved in gaseous exchange, but in photosynthesis. Question 13 from 2003. Which of the following structures in human body provide the best surface for diffusion? A. Skin, B. Stomach, C. Alveolus, and D. Oesophagus. What do you think is the answer? The correct option is option C. Alveolus. The alveolus have a large surface area that aid diffusion of gases in the respiratory system of man. Question 11 from 2008. In adult frog, gaseous exchange takes place through the A. Buccal cavity, skin, and lungs, B. Buccal cavity, skin, and spiracles, C. Gills, skin, and buccal cavity, and D. Tympanic membrane, lungs, and gills. Look at the pairing of these organs and pick your answer. The correct answer is option A, buccal cavity, skin, and lungs. That is all we have for you in this lesson. Remember, keep reading, for readers are leaders.